Hi, uh, Robert, back again. Just another story in history, trying to point out how the authorities are supposed to take charge and look after us, but they don't. And I'm just trying to point out what happened in history. Nothing has changed. Anyway, this is another story. Hope you listen. Here we go. The Irish potato famine. This is about. In 1845 to 1849, it happened. What the Irish mainly would eat were potatoes. The type of potatoes were called the Irish lumper. Most of the farmers were Irish peasants who rented a small holding from their wealthy English landlords. In 1845, the potato crops failed and a deathly fungus spread throughout the land. The potatoes basically died, turning black and rotten in their soil beds. Somehow they managed to scrape through to 1846, a new crop on the way. This year's crop would surely be disease-free. To their dismay, the potatoes were all affected by this horrible fungus again, and not a potato left, all tainted, a black stinking lumper. The farmer would find. This blight moved across Ireland at the speed of over 70 kilometres a week. Desperation started to set in, so there were very few potatoes left to feed the millions. As in 1847 now approached, the main source of food was now all but gone. The year of black 1847 was now going to take its toll. This terrible situation came about because the potato, the Irish lumper, as it was called, was the only breed of a variety of potato they planted, so genetically there were no variations. If there were several other varieties, it would have alleviated the problem. They may not have succumbed to the same disease. They probably wouldn't have. But the Irish had been planting and living off this only potato since around the 1600s. It was imported from South America. It grew very well with a minimum of work, so it suited the conditions. This potato thrived and fed millions for generations, so you couldn't blame them for the ongoing year after year of planting them. No matter the English weren't far away, they would help, for the knowledge of the hungry Irish and the black putrid potatoes was well and truly known now by the politicians and the wealthy landowners in England. The authorities in Britain had all the power and the means to halt the mass starvation that was about to take place. The British Prime Minister, was Sir Robert Peel, and at the start of this dilemma, he tried, at least attempted a little bit of a way to help by removing the duties on imported corn from India, so this could have been food supplies to the Irish. Other small efforts for food relief in one form or another were attempted by Peel, the Prime Minister, even though these actions would still fall short of saving everyone. At least it was some sort of attempt. But even this subtle attempt by Peel was enough to upset the establishment and the people of Britain. The response was very clear. Peel was voted out of his job as Prime Minister in 1846. You see, the British had been fighting with the Irish for a couple of hundred years, well before this potato blight, and it finished the British occupied Ireland. Great Britain in 1801 put in law the 1801 Act of Union, so integrated Ireland into Great Britain, basically giving themselves the right to take with force a country. In other words, we're the boss now, you obey our rules and laws. We own your land, not you. So even though England and Ireland were now integrated, the Irish did not get the same treatment and respect as the English gave their own. With the Prime Minister Peel gone, all decision-making on this urgent crisis was left in the hands of the Assistant Secretary of the British Treasury, Sir Charles Edward Trevelyan. So this one man had control over the very lives of hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people. How these arrangements are made is so ridiculous and unfair For me, it is hard to comprehend. We are now, remember, in the middle of the 1850s. We have ships, clothes, language, food crops, politicians, government, the Christian religion well established in one form or another. There were laws, courts, judges, big stone buildings, cathedrals, books, newspapers, kings, queens, the monarchy existed. In other words, I'm saying we had worldliness, experience, civilization and refinement of culture. With all these institutions and entities in place, the Irish potato disaster would not be a disaster at all. Very simple steps could have been taken by all those powers above. Instead of a few Irish people getting a little hungry for a while they waited for help, for food to arrive, this is what happened. So we go back to that one human being, yes, just one, this repulsive, pompous, repugnant, cruel, self-centred imbecile. This is the sicko. That's Trevelyan. He took control. He was the head of the Treasury. All in his refinement, all his stuff. Anyway, that's that. I can't say the rude words. That's him. He took control of the situation. That's Sir Charles Trevelyan. All these sirs. He only went to Ireland once. The whole time this disaster was unfolding, Trevelyan stated, since that visit he was unmoved by the suffering he's seen. This, in his opinion, put him in a better position in making decisions of what best to do. So he felt he's seen it and was unmoved. Of course he was unmoved because of a psychopathic narcissist. What, unmoved by walking, roaming, homelessness after people being evicted by their wealthy British landlords, starved to death, bodies laying on village roads, the people too weak to bury their own? This is Trevelyan actually wrote this. The judgment of God sent the calamity to teach the Irish a lesson. He wrote that. He said that. What a, like I say, I can't say rude words. He actually said that. Well, I don't think that was the case, Trevelyan. I think God gave you free will and you used your free will to wield your sadistic, psychopathic nature onto innocent women, children and men. So of course you weren't moved by what you witnessed. You were a sick, narcissistic psychopath, all backed up by the establishment, who also behold the same evil, stinking character as you did, Trevelyan. That's my opinion anyway of him. Anyway, well, that's my rant on Trevelyan. So one of the first things this disgusting human being done, him, look at the pompous. It just makes you sick. Anyway, where was I? One of the first this disgusting human being done was to order that ships loaded with British government food going to Ireland be stopped. This is his reasoning. Reasoning in his mind was the best approach. His reasoning was that the Irish may become become a habit and dependent. Can you actually imagine the evil idiocy of this man? He's all clean. In this picture, he's all clean. An open, expensive tweed vest, a silk cravat around his neck, well groomed, a chain dangling from his fob watch in his vest pocket, a long tailored warm coat, well fed, healthy, all well paid by the taxpayer. What a dirtbag. Anyway, of course, the very opposite was needed. The ships with food should have been doubled, and only for a period of time until the potato crops came good again. There was no way the Irish were at fault. It was simply a black fungus that destroyed their crops of potatoes. Two things the British did do was, one, provide a public works program. This gave men, women and children a job. The grand work was smashing, breaking stones with handheld hammers, making them small enough for the use in road making. They filled baskets up with now small stones, which had to be taken to where the road work was being laid. This work was hard and laborious. Also, the pay was pathetic. Most so weak from hunger could not perform this work for very long. The other grand gesture the British organised was soup kitchens. The government passed the Soup Kitchen Act. This so-called soup you would get was about £1 or half a kilo, a slice of bread weighing about 0.2 of a pound or 100 grams. This was totally inadequate, for the demand totally outweighed the supply. With no food and being evicted from the farms, many in the finish headed for government poorhouses, which were God-forsaken places, a hovel of starving, desperate, the sick and the diseased. In one of these poorhouses, 50% of the children who came died. This is what they, after they are evicted, that's like an evicted person with all their worldly goods sitting on a table in the cold, waiting for some help. Where was help going to come? Police would come and evict them. English police would come and evict them, drag them out of the house. See another picture on that. They were in the poorhouses, which were God-forsaken places, a hovel of starving, desperate, the sick and diseased. Who came and died. You can imagine skeletons of living people huddled together on some filthy straw. The situation was now common knowledge in Ireland and Britain. The news was now over a year old. This was very preventable. This was a very preventable happening. Why did not the ones in power do something about it? That's the question. I'll give you my answer, pretending I'm speaking to Trevelyan. When you are drinking French champagne, eating pheasant and duck, while sitting at the table in your grand mansion in Britain, the impressive fireplace, the large marble mantelpiece with several logs burning, a warm fire in the hearth, the artwork on the walls, all this lavish opulence surrounding you somehow adds to your self-importance, Mr. Trevelyan. How you come to the conclusion that when a child dies of starvation laying on a filthy straw in a cold, dirty government poorhouse, while you sit in total opulence with every luxury at your fingertips, how you expect this, as all okay, good and proper, is the saddest thing in the whole world. For right throughout history up until this very day, the same vile, self-absorbed, arrogant, narcissistic, vain, greed and ego-driven people have in the main been the ones that hold these positions of power. For only a handful of sick-minded psychopaths have power over what freedoms the masses have. They absolutely control who lives, who dies. This has been going on for centuries and it continues the same very system today. So unsound, so flawed, such a phony convention established and now entrenched all over the world. Currently in modern day. Today, much of the population go along with this devious sham, accepting the orders of today's Trevelyans. When your family is starving to death, you will steal anything to be able to feed them. People who did steal for this reason were treated brutally, thrown into prison. They were taken or transported to Australia as convicts. There are over 4,000 young girls being orphaned by the famine. They were transported to Australia in this British colony. These girls were mainly used for domestic servants. You can only imagine what abuse and exploitation went on. Also, there were many who wanted to leave after the famine. The immigration was quite large, with mostly the Irish going to USA, Australia. Some went to Canada. Not many though. These ships were not many to Canada. The ships were filled to capacity, and many died on the way, mainly of typhus, while waiting in the quarantine situation aboard the ships. These are the ones going to Canada. On the St. Lawrence River, they were in quarantine, just waiting on the river and the ships as to enter Canada. The dead were thrown overboard. The Canadians witnessed this in horror as bodies floated down the river. In this whole sorry saga, roughly 1 million people died of disease or starvation. Another 1 million went to Britain, America, Australia, tried to start a better life. All of this pain, misery and suffering, the dead, the convicts, the orphans, was so very easily preventable. This is another picture. This is our a family in a broken down old house, and you can see the police at the entrance, and they're going to try to defend themselves. You know, same thing. Got the thugs coming in to enforce idiotic laws. I mean, they're just there trying to survive in a broken down old house, and police are coming to oust them. The suffering of the dead, the convicts, was all this, the pain, misery and suffering, the dead and the convicts was also very easily preventable. So I hope you start to ponder coming to an understanding that it is very simple and uncomplicated why this happened. It is because self-absorbed, narcissistic, evil people who care naught for the population, for the people, for you, are the ones who run the world. Same thing goes on today, exactly the same thing. You think it's not as blatant as that, it's all hidden. And I said to you before, I'm going to prove it to you. And I know you don't believe me yet, but I've got much more to say, so it's just another example. And this is not my opinion, this is just a fact. People were dying. And that's how the authorities they're supposed to be very knowledgeable, aware, understanding, clever people in charge. And you see how they reacted to a simple thing of people not having food, and they could have easily got them the food. It's impossible, but scum like this are in charge. Scum like that. At the same time, he's got all what opens and shuts. He's got the warmth, the buildings, the clothes, and he looks at other people and says it. The same arrogance exists in the leaders today. But we've got a lot more to get through if you care to keep watching. It's going to take a while. I'm just trying to permeate your sort of mind to get to understand that it's the establishment, it's the ones in charge. They are the ones that actually cause all the main problems. And then they look and blame somebody else. Now, there's one sort of little thing I just want to finish off on. There's a song. There's a song called "The Fields of Avon Rye," and there was a movie with Kate Blanchett in it. And in the movie, she's a journalist in Ireland. I think it was Kate Blanchett. She started as a journalist. It's a real story. Actually happened. She was tracking down this drug dealer. He was a wealthy bloke. He owned racehorses and so on, but he was dealing in drugs and was turning all the young people. They were onto it. They were, becoming poverty. They were dying, and they were really getting into the drugs mainly in the poorer areas. And she's seen this, and she eventually sort of tracked it down to this bloke, and she went to try to interview him. Anyway, it's a movie. I won't tell you all what happened. She was a brave one who spoke up. Of course, the government and the police if one journalist knows what's going on, of course the police and the government know what's going on. He's a well-known drug dealer. It was obvious he couldn't have that amount of money, and but it was left up to a journalist. And well, I won't tell you if you haven't seen the movie. Watch it, Cate Blanchett. But at the end, so they made the movie in Ireland. That was in modern times, of course. This the journalist with this drug dealer and all that. But at the end of making the movie, the producers and different people who made the movie, they're waiting at a train station in Ireland somewhere, going to the airport, I suppose, to fly out. And they heard on the station there was this little kid, and he had such a strong Irish accent, and he was singing the Fields of Avon. And part of it is beyond the prison wall, a young girl is calling, Michael, they are taking you away. 'Cause you stole Trevelyan's corn, so your young would see the morn. Now a prison ship lies waiting in the bay. That's part of it. I never knew, I knew when I heard the song, because it said Trevelyan, I thought, oh, and then I remembered the story about that. So the song is saying, the father went and stole corn, and because Trevelyan was the boss over the whole island, it was like Classwell, sort of his corn. You stole Trevelyan's corn, so young would see the morning, me the morn. So you'll hear that song at the end of the movie, the little kid. So someone heard it, and they sent someone back and taped the little kid's voice to play at the end of the movie. And he's just got such a cute, strong accent, and he's just singing for, he's just a busker on the platform of the railway station. So get that movie. It's a real good movie, and it's totally true. And what happened, the Irish government, if I remember right, so say if you got caught with all these goods and like a mansion and yachts and racehorses, it was up to the government to prove where you got it all from. And there was such an uproar when what happened to the journalist after this drug lord had his way. The community, the people stood up, and there was protests, and then they changed the legislation and the government around that the government didn't have to prove now where you got your funds from, because these rich blokes, they hire lawyers and accountants, and they are armed anyway, but it was up for the government to prove it. But because of all the uproar, and it's only because the people stood up, it's very rare. Of course, the government should have had it the other way around, but the government then changed it that no, if you got all these this opulence, they ask you prove where you got the money for the yacht, for the racehorse, for your mansion, and that changed. And I think they show that in the movie, or they say it at the end with all the writing. So anyway, that's. Hope it didn't bore you. They're very important things in my mind because it's just hard to get into your brain how the people who rule over us and supposed to be looking after us, they don't. And I know a lot of people just are hypnotised and they think they do, that the politicians and the bureaucrats get up and say something and it's just real, true and proper when it's not the case. So anyway, that's just another sad story in history, which I'm going to say other things, and I've said it before. They're near the end of all my talks, which I've still got many to do to sort of keep on saying different things. At the end, I'm going to be talking about modern times and telling you my take on what's really happening. By then, hopefully you may be like go along with it in your own mind after you've thought about it yourself. And then once, if you understand or agree with me, then we can attempt to do something about it. But it's no use me attempting to for us to try to do something about it, because most of the population don't even really realise there's a problem. So it's the same thing as all of them. As I said before, the balance and the power that people have. That's okay to have power and the right, but you have to have it balanced out to take full responsibility for your actions, your decisions, and what you do. But they never take that responsibility. They want all the power. They want that, but the responsibility, no. Just like Trevelyan. Millions died, and he stayed in his mansion with his big pay. He only went there once. Just like the ones that had the power over Ignace Semmelweis. Just the ones that had the power over those 15 dogs, all the same. So I'm going to keep on working on that. I just want you to get established in your mind, or I'm trying to, that any leader that has the power to direct any of us in any law, that they have to face up to responsibilities, whether they're a bureaucrat or whatever. You make a law, you force something to happen, you force people to do things. When things go wrong, if you don't want to take on that responsibility, well, don't put your hand up for the job. If you haven't got, but the people who have these jobs, they don't care about responsibility. They don't have a conscience, and they're the ones who float to the top. The story about like CSL, how remember Val Baisley, how he said something. These days they don't even get that far. Anybody that starts to be recognised as doing some good, you're snuffed out early. You don't get that. You don't get that position. They don't want anyone talking up. Anyway, I've said enough for this video. I'll be doing another one soon on some subject. So that's all for now. Thank you.